It's really just such a delight to be here to be able to talk to you about anorexia. Anorexia nervosa is a devastating eating disorder. I'm an endocrinologist at Massachusetts General Hospital in the neuroendocrine unit, and my research is focused on understanding anorexia. And most of the time, this disorder affects girls or women, but boys and men can also have anorexia. These people with anorexia starve themselves, and they have an unrealistic perception of their own bodies. So this girl who was diagnosed with anorexia in the 1800s may have looked in the mirror and thought to herself, I better not eat dinner or I'll get fat. These patients can be very ill. They're starving themselves, and some die. Anorexia has the highest mortality of any psychiatric disease. And unfortunately, anorexia is difficult to treat. I remember my first experience with a friend who had anorexia when we were teenagers. And she went away one summer, a typical normal weight girl, and came back 3 months later looking like this girl. She stopped coming out to dinner with us and instead would retreat to her bedroom at mealtime, and we knew that she wasn't eating. We knew that this wasn't healthy. But we really didn't understand it, and we certainly didn't know what to do about it. We just wanted her to eat, and we thought that this was her choice. But what I've learned through my research is that anorexia nervosa is not a choice. Anorexia is an illness with an underlying biology, just like heart disease. And these patients need medical treatment to get better. So why does one girl develop anorexia when another does not? Well, based on the prevalence of anorexia, there are at least a few of you here who have struggled with this disorder. And if you have anorexia, then your daughter is 10 times more likely than the daughter of the person next to you to develop this disorder. Why is that? Well, you and your daughter share genes. And just like in heart disease, our DNA plays a big role in determining whether or not we'll develop anorexia. So certainly environment plays a role. Our magazines, our entertainment industry have created this impossibly thin ideal body image for women. And this has an impact, but it's not everything. Why does one girl develop anorexia and starve herself in the same environment when another does not? And we think that the answer is in the underlying neurobiology of the disease. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my research, but first I think it's important to give you some background on the neurobiology of appetite. And I'll start with appetite-regulating hormones. These are substances that are released from your stomach, from your intestines, even from your body fat in response to the food that you eat and the amount of energy that you have available in your body. And these hormones are released into the bloodstream. They go to the brain, where they can either signal an increase in hunger or they can reduce the signal to eat. And so my colleagues and I are studying these hormones that regulate appetite, as well as the areas of the brain that they interact with in anorexia. And what we found is that women with anorexia have abnormal appetite neurobiology, even after weight recovery. Women with anorexia aren't feeling as hungry as other women. They have lower appetite, and they have decreased activity in the areas of the brain that are involved in appetite. They also have abnormal levels of the hormones that regulate appetite. And this is just one example of the global decrease in activation in these areas of the brain involved in appetite that we see in anorexia. So in this study, we had women in the MRI scanner looking at pictures of foods, and you can see that the healthy women, shown in blue, had an increase in signal in this area of the brain called the insula, whereas those with anorexia actually had a decrease in the activity in this area of the brain. And the insula is really important for integrating signals that are coming internally from areas like the GI tract in the regulation of appetite. We've found that abnormal levels of these hormones that regulate appetite are associated with lower appetite and with the severity of disordered eating thoughts and behaviors in women with anorexia. And we've also found that abnormal levels of hormones that regulate appetite are associated with this decrease in activation of brain regions involved in eating. So the picture that's emerged is one of an abnormal underlying neurobiology in anorexia. So why is this important, and how can we use this information? Well, for those of you who are parents who are concerned about your own child's risk of developing an eating disorder, I think that the information that we get from this kind of research may inform us about who is at risk. Imagine if your pediatrician could tell you, based on test results, how likely your child is to have an eating disorder and how concerned you need to be. For those of you who have anorexia or who care about someone who has anorexia, the kind of information that we're getting out of this research may lead to better treatments. So, for example, if there's a hormone that decreases appetite, and that hormone is released in excess in patients with anorexia, then we could potentially block that hormone and block that signal to not eat and help people with the recovery process and even help prevent relapse. And I think for all of us, the data that's coming out of this research reminds us that those who have anorexia are not to blame. Anorexia is an illness with an underlying biology, just like heart disease, and these patients need medical treatment to get better. Thank you.